So let's talk about pre-match routine. Step 0.
Yep. Phase 0 would be preparation. And that can start way ahead in terms of travel accommodations, making sure that you have like your flight, your hotel, all of that. I'm not going to tell you to become the travel agent. I worked in travel. I love that part. I'm like, I'll do that part. But if you know someone and delegated that to someone, then at least knowing what's going on, not just like, oh yeah, well, she was supposed to do it and not know anything, because you still have to be in charge of like, you have to make sure that you get there and it has to be on you. And then making sure that you have your bag packed, things are charged, that you have an extra gi, anything that they're going to be like, your belt's too frayed, sorry. And you're like, I need a belt. So anything that can kind of go wrong and protecting that. Also having a playlist. Actually, I've done this where I tell my clients, you're going to be making a playlist, and then I'll be like, you know what, let's do it right now. Pull up Spotify, start choosing some of the songs. What is the emotion that you want to elicit in this time? What do you know about this part of the experience? Then where's your headspace usually at? What is happening there, right? So I think it's important to always think like, I'm not going to know exactly what I need when I'm there, but I'm going to prep for that and at least feel like when I get there, I can do the thing because I already know.
Okay. Phase 1.
Phase 1 is acclimate. So another thing is setting those intentions. So as soon as you walk into the threshold, it has to be symbolic. So you walk through the door. Maybe it's the first door, the second door, the third door, but the door when you go into all of the matches, like the arena area, everything. So this is where you're going to get acclimated and say, what do I want to achieve today? It's not about a goal, because it's not about like, well, I need to win, right? Because you don't have control over that. What do you have control over? How you do things. You could say, I'm gonna be patient today. I'm gonna trust the process. I'm gonna fuck around and find out. It could be, bring that dog out. It could be, be here now. If in the previous times you've been like, oh God, I'm everywhere. Like but if I could just say that I enjoyed today, then that'll be good. Because normally I only enjoy having done it. I don't enjoy the actual process.
Okay, so set an intention.
Exactly. Yeah. But say it to yourself, like that self-talk. You can even say it out loud. You can say it to yourself in the mirror. I've had clients do that. And then getting acclimated. This is where the present moment starts. And it's, I've made the reference a couple times and clients have loved it so far. I watched Christopher Robin, and Pooh ends up finding him and coming out of the tree, and he finds Christopher Robin all grown up and he's all stressed out. And so they're on the train and he's like, you need to entertain yourself. So then Pooh looks out the window and he's like, tree, person, dog. And he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, say what you see, game. And I'm like, is that not mindfulness? Is that not grounding? That is just not putting judgment on it, not going, there's the smelly guy. Oh, there's the ref that screwed me over the last time. Or, oh my God, I can't wait to get a picture with that guy, or anything like that. Like, that's not something that is going to serve you. It's just going to, you're going to ruminate, you're going to go off track. So just saying, like, there's a yellow barrier. What does it smell like? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And grounding yourself in that moment. And I usually say take a lap.
Okay. So, like, just literally walk around the
Literally
venue.
Also,
yeah, that's exactly what I do. I walk in there. I'm like, I'm like, what am I doing here today? And it's like, usually it's like, I want to enjoy this. And then that's the first thing I do. Just big lap around the thing. Start getting like, just like feel the venue.
Every day is different. If you're a blue belt juvenile, you're going to be sharing the bullpen with black belts. Some of your idols most of the time with the scheduling. Or it's going to be so early that no one's even there. Or it's going to be masters, so no one's there. Or it's going to be white belts and people are just screaming to scream because they're just
scream.
Yeah.
Because scream.
Yes.
That's what we do.
They have the most support. And so, so it's like just getting in there and going like, this is what's happening right now. That's cool.
Okay.
That's sick.
Cool. What's next?
So the next phase is to check in and change, or change and check in, I think sounds better. So you have to go to the changing room or whatever, and you got to go change into your gear, your gi, your no gi, whatever it is. And then, this is a symbolic thing because you need to think about what your objectives are. So you might have gotten to the venue and had to support teammates or coach. You have students, whatever it is. So if you have that, then you're not competitor you are coach you, or you're just silly old you, right? Like there's no role that you're playing, you're just existing. But as soon as you change, some people have said it's like a wetsuit. For a surfer that I worked with, she was like, it's like my superhero outfit. Some people have said like, well, that was my civilian clothes. Now I have a uniform and I'm doing my job. And so whatever self-talk that you say there has to be symbolic, and the symbolism has to kind of master this idea of, I'm going to be selfish. This is about me. I need to make this about me. This is not about anyone else, and I need to protect my energy because I've decided what kind of emotions that I think are going to be helpful for me and unhelpful, and I'm going to aim to get there.
Cool. And then?
Then we go into the warm-up, which is like your spot. That's you. And so I like to say have the match before the match. I remember just from my experience, like I'd go to CrossFit like every day, and every time I'd go through the warm-up, I'm like, my body's telling me no. And it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to break through this wall. And so if I just get through the warm up, you like kind of break through this wall where like the things that are happening to your body, you might interpret them as negative, and that's the physiological arousal. So as things happen with your body, clammy hands, your chest is tight, the butterflies, your heart rate's going up, like those are very similar to a regular fight or flight response. Like you're, oh my God, someone's in my apartment, right? And you become hyper vigilant. But we need to be vigilant, not hyper vigilant, but vigilant. We need to have our spidey senses because we need to make fast decisions and be able to understand the complex dynamic movements that are happening in front of us. And so to get there, what do you need? Well, you need to be excited, maybe. It depends on what, maybe you want to be a little anxious. Maybe you want to feel confident. How do you do that? Well, you carry yourself that way. What does a confident person look like? What does a playful person look like? Plus, I really recommend having someone to actually do a roll with and have some resistance and someone to smack you around, because there's a difference between training and competition, between mat side and bullpen, to like getting out there and doing the thing. And someone's going to be yanking you. Someone's going to be like practically, punching you. And so if you become like shocked, to that intensity, then, it's going to take you a little bit you might be behind, and that might just be the match.
Yeah, I started slapping myself in the face, literally.
Same.
Like right before I get on the mat, my ears will be ringing. Like, just fucking slap myself.
Right?
And I'm like, all right, I'm ready.
I mean, if that's self-regulation right there. I don't need someone to slap me.
Well, because I know when I get in there, there's just like you said, they're gonna be yanking on me and stuff, and I want to feel that before I get on the mat. So I'm like, let me just do it harder. Nobody's gonna smack me, so let me just do that.
There's a Hey Arnold episode where they're like, it was Harold's gonna beat him up, and then it's like Helga is like, 3 days and 2 hours and 5 seconds till you die.
I remember that one.
He's freaking out. Funny. He's like, Gerald, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to get beat up. And so he devises this plan the night before, and he walks out, and you think he's wearing sunglasses or something. He's being all weird and cryptic, and he puts this boombox down, and he starts dancing.
I remember.
I do
and
remember
then he
this.
goes,
wow.
Don't hit me. I'll hit me.
Oh, man. It's all coming back.
It's a core memory.
So that was huge.
That's incredible.
So I learned a couple things.
I would have never remembered that episode if it weren't for you right now.
I also think about wide open spaces when they're on the subway and they get stuck. But it's this idea that like, okay, first of all, be weird as fuck. Just be really weird, and people are going to be like, what is she doing? And then leave you alone.
Psychological warfare.
Yeah, it is. But jiu-jitsu is mind games at the highest level. If you're gonna telegraph, if you're gonna do all these things, like, you're gonna be able to read me. But at the same time, like, what if I read your emotion? What if I read like if your brow is furrowed, like with Bia and her scary face? It scared me, even though I know and I've seen it and I photographed it and I've been right up there with it. But when it's targeted towards you, oof. That's different, right? And so the more that you can give yourself that same, and when you warm up, those things are eliciting maybe negative things, like people that come from trauma, and I know that comes up in terms of like maybe females who have been sexually assaulted. They might find themselves in bottom side control, and there's a big man, and the feeling, they know where they're at, but the feeling is eliciting the same bodily response as when they didn't have control and when thing was happening to them.
Right.
And that's where people have a relationship with the physiological responses, and you have to purposely decide to see it as facilitative. Because when you go from, oh, fuck, it's happening. Oh my God, I feel like I'm walking through a quicksand. I can't even get up the stairs to go to the bathroom without like breathing heavy. How am I going to fight someone? And then all this rumination starts happening and spiraling versus, oh, hell yeah. Like I think about the cockpit, like, like all these little things that are like slowly warming up, and you're just flipping the switches. That's kind of what that feels like. So that is a very important time that the physical has to kind of match the mental and vice versa.
Okay, so after the warm-up,
Mm-hmm.
now you're moving into...
Yes. It's also important to remember that if there is a bullpen, that, you know, there's a time that you can check in. And so I don't want the athlete to be thinking about, oh my God, am I going to be late? Am I going to be late? Do I need to keep checking? And not be able to fully be present and focus on their warm-up. So you can either choose, if you're alone, you can choose to be near the warm-up area. You can have your phone and just make sure that you're kind of like checking it. Or the best thing is to delegate it to someone else. And then when we go into the bullpen, this is a choice, right? So once your name is on the board, that's when you're allowed to check in. But you can wait around until they have to call your name. So I'll ask someone, like, do you get nervous when your name is called? Like, does that spike your arousal at all? And if they're like, no, I prefer it, I'm like, cool, yeah, do your thing. Go to the bathroom, do whatever you want, and then they'll tell you when to go in. But if vice versa, like some people have like, well, I want to get in there. I want to weigh in because I cut a lot of weight. So I want to have time to chug my Pedialyte. And so whatever that decision is made, when you go to check in, this is really interesting because people will minimize it, even though it's a huge part. Because if you don't pass these two tests, you don't get to compete. You could do everything right. You could sign up. You can get the points for it. You can pay for it, buy the travel, get there, like everything. And still not be able to compete if you don't make the weight and if you're not wearing the right gear. And as dumb as it sounds that something like that could be so, you know, that could ruin everything, it's still important. And so I think it's really great if athletes can say, like, I did that. I did that. Like, that's awesome that I did that, because if I didn't otherwise, then, you know, a lot of times we minimize everything. Like, of course I made weight. I'm supposed to make weight. Of course I did. That's not helpful, because it doesn't set the momentum of, I'm doing everything right. Everything is happening as I planned. This is great. Now I'm allowed to be stuck in this bullpen for however long until I, you know.
You're at the whim of the IBJJ.
Exactly. Exactly.
I breathe a sigh of relief every time I make it into the bullpen. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, right? It's like, oh my God. Like, it's almost like the point of no return as well. And it can have positive and negative connotations. So I also will say, okay, we can't control how long we're in the bullpen, but we can control what we do in the bullpen. So I will go even as far as saying, like, look, you can choose where in the bullpen you want to be. Do you want to be back corner? Do you want to be, like, right there? So when they call your name, you're like, yeah, let's go.
I'm that guy, yeah. I'm, like, right up at the front.
Same.
I'm like,
yep.
I don't, yeah.
And there's a motivation that's different. It could be, I don't want to miss my match.
Yeah, I just don't want to, like, I don't want to be, because I've seen so many guys who are, like, in there, and the mat coordinator will be calling their name, like, 3-4 times. They're, like, they got their headphones in. I'm like, dude.
Usually you get a nice person that's like, oh, you know, they're calling you, you know, if they know who you are, if they know you're their opponent. But the idea behind I'm stuck in here versus I get to be in here is really a different mindset.
Yeah, it's the same thing as, like, that, like, when you start feeling those physiological signs of arousal, like the clammy hands and everything. It's like the let's go as opposed to, oh, shit. Same thing with the bullpen almost. It's like, oh, now I'm in here, like, and now I just need to get released to, you know.
And I've had to modify this because some of the tournaments now, like Grappling Industries, the ADCC Open, they don't have the bullpen, which I think is interesting, because then you put it in the hands of the person who's going. Like, if you want to compete, you'll show up.
Right.
You'll be there. Right. And as far as I know, they don't have a lot of no-shows. Like, all the ones that I've been to, I haven't seen many no-shows, which is really interesting.
That was different. They had a free Grappling Industries here in San Jose pretty recently, and it was like more than 50% no-shows, but that was because it was free.
Right, exactly. And people didn't feel loyal to it.
The game,
And so the bullpen's a really interesting place, because that's where you can do a lot of imagery. So usually I'll say, like, successful but realistic moments. So part of your game, like, if you want to pull guard, maybe think about pulling guard when the other person pulls guard at the same time. And you're too late and you have to come up, right? Or like they try to steal the two. Like, how are you going to deal with that? If you see that coming, like, are you going to sprawl? You know, it's not just, I'm going to do the thing. I did have a conversation when I was doing MMA. I went into MMA and I decided that I was going to have, you know, Black House as my place, and Hoist Gracie had come in because his son was doing the wrestling classes because he was doing MMA. And I told him, because he knew that I was a black belt, and he's standing there and he's wearing like a Bellator shirt because his son was in Bellator, and had like a red, you know, like octagon. No, you can't say octagon for Bellator, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I tell him, like, yeah, you know, I just want to go in there and I want to just take him down and do my thing. And he's like, that's not a goal, that's a dream.
Right.
And I was like, oh. And he was like, you have to act like you are controlling the distance. So if you want to get in there and you feel it's safe, then you can go. But if you don't feel it's safe, then you have to be able to back up, right, and create that distance, you know. And he goes, just think of it like you have like this red circle around you, like a red bubble around you, and you maintain that distance. And I looked at him and I took my finger and I was like, I traced the red thing on his circle, like the circle on his shirt, and I was like this. And he was just like, yeah. It was like the autism was just like coming out really full force there. It was very strange for me, but I didn't realize till after. But yeah, so maintaining your energy in that way of like having that distance bubble kind of thing. You can choose to talk to people in the bullpen if you want to, if you want to make friends, or if you want to wait till you make friends after. And that goes into what self-talk and, you know, the imagery, but also what kind of intentions are you going to have there? Like it, because you don't get to control it, but instead of focusing on what you can't control, we focus on, okay, what music do you want to play? What mood do you want to be in? Do you want to what do you want to eat snacks? Do you want to, like, how do you want to spend this time?
Cool.
Yeah. It gets pretty chaotic. Like, I think one thing too that shocked me the very first few times I compete, and like which still happens now, is just like how loud it is. It's like it's so weird. You expect, or at least I did when I went onto the mat for the first time. It's like, oh, it'll be like at the gym, right? Like I'll be able to kind of hear everything. Like I'll have my bearings. I'll be oriented and everything. But you walk out there and it's just like screaming, and it's like, yeah. And I think that's probably, I imagine that could be something that's like super overwhelming for a lot of people, I would assume.
You said disorienting, like getting oriented, and that's huge because, I mean, we go back to before you've done all of this, you should have gone and figured out what your values are. So if your value is joy, you know, obviously you're going to be like, wow, I love this shit. If it's gratitude, it's going to be, wow, I'm so, you know, I'm thankful that I'm here. If it's power, you know, it's like, man, how can I give myself power here? How can I charge up my power right before I go out? So having that designated, but as your compass, but also having the routine that says, well, I've already planned for this. I already know what's going to happen. I already kind of vaguely know. And it gives you that perceived control and self-efficacy to say, like, if I can manage this, then yeah, I can manage a lot of things, because I'm used to having things outside of my control. I can't control the weather. I can't control anything. I can't control the ref. I can't control my opponent. I can influence my opponent, but I can't control my opponent.
Yeah. Even like you were talking about the like deciding in the bullpen if you're going to like make friends with people in there or wait till afterwards and stuff. But even that, like when I'm in the bullpen, like just going back to the things that are within your control, like there's so many people who will just, because everybody's kind of on a different like wavelength sort of. So there's people trying to make friends with you. There's people like just kind of off in the corner, and like even just the interactions that you'll have with people in the bullpen, you can't control who's coming up to you. You can't. So like just maintaining that focus and just sort of like accepting everything that's happening around you, I find is like, I don't know, just kind of guides your focus, right?
Yeah, because you have to accept. That's, you know, I use a lot of acceptance and commitment therapy. So it's having those values, being committed to those values, but also having self as context. So we have our feeling self, like I'm in it. I can't see anything objectively because I'm just so deep in it. Or you have the objective self, which is like the 30,000 foot view. It's like, if I could just put myself as a placeholder, if little Jenny was going through this, like what would I tell Jenny? And that brings in the self-compassion, because self-compassion is about being mindful of how you treat yourself, treating yourself as you would a good friend, but also understanding the common humanity of like, everybody goes through this. This is a very common thing. Yeah. So it's a form of self-regulation and self-soothing that happens, but you also have to know yourself and, you know, be in the present moment. And that's the hardest part, because you're like, well, what if this, what if that, what if this, or, oh, like I just remembered that I have to do that. Or anytime that you're not, you know, in the present moment. I had my surfer client, I said, look, when you're waiting for those waves, because sometimes you just got to wait for it, and, you know, you don't get to control the ocean. So look at your hands. If you find yourself, you know, thinking about other things, ground yourself, look at your hands, and, you know,
I read.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I take a Kindle with me, and every time I start to like wind myself up, I'm like, hold on.
Does it depend on what you're reading?
No.
Really?
Just if I'm reading something, my mind is like on the page and I'm not.
Is that a distraction?
I mean, I guess, but I feel like it serves me well. Like I get myself out of I can get myself out of the nerves if I can just dive into whatever book that I'm reading or whatever.
So acceptance and commitment also says that we're not trying to have experiential avoidance. Right. We're trying to have psychological flexibility.
Okay.
And so acceptance says, yeah, this sucks, but it's temporary. Or the both and approach of like, this sucks and there's nothing I can fucking do about it and I'm going to get through it. Like that's the acceptance that says, this is what I am. This is what I have. I may not like that I got big arms all the time, but like, you know what? Like they actually serve me and I can't get rid of them. So this is what I have. This is the card that I was dealt. And the way that you say it is not, this is the card that I was dealt. So whatever, I'm just going to have to find, it's not just like an angry surrender. There is a surrendering aspect to it, a submissive aspect to it. But it's the fact that like you can either sit there fighting something that is never going to move, like an inanimate object, or you can decide like, yeah, that's going to have to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a freedom sort of thing, as opposed to like surrendering to it versus like allowing it to be there. And
think about being a small person in jiu-jitsu or just anyone in jiu-jitsu, but you are not necessarily fighting their strength. You might just redirect their strength. Right? Like when I'm in bottom half, for example, and I learned, being in MMA and I had to learn wrestling and I had to learn to be on top, they would always talk about, okay, as soon as you get in bottom half, like you're getting up on your elbow or your hand and you're putting your head on their chest. So they, these punches are the only thing they can get. And you're getting that underhook and you're trying to get on top and grinding there. And so that's an acceptance level, but at the same time, using their pressure in, because now you can, pivot around them, right? Or if someone is big, like you don't want to just be flat. You want to stay on your side. Maybe it means that you can use their momentum because now they're moving over and you feel their weight distribution. Now you're like, cool, let's go over that way. So it's using it to your advantage, but not doing one of these because this just doesn't work. And this could be, I can't accept that I lost. That's a hard one. I've been there. Yeah. Not being able to accept that and move on. So the idea that the acceptance is there, like this is what I'm accepting, and this is the room that I have to choose. Like I get to choose what I listen to. I get to choose who I have around me. I get to choose what I want to say and do. I am the captain of my ship. You know. Cool. And then the next phase.
Yeah, I was gonna ask because we're in the bullpen, and now they've called your name, and you're like on your way to the mat. So I would assume there's another phase involved.
Or you're waiting for you to be called, and then they're like, you're up. So then now, this is something that I think about. Do you need to step in front of your opponent and walk to the mat in the front of them, or do you want to burn a hole in their back when you walk behind them, or does it really matter? Is it going to stress you out if you can't choose? Because if you're in front of the bullpen and you're like the opening, like you're like, yeah, I'm here. You can, be the first. Yeah. But again, it's symbolic. So if it's not a thing and you feel like it's just going to stress you out more if you don't get into that front position. But it's, again, what can you control? So I'm going to take every little thing I can. So when I get to the mat, usually there's a match going on. And then what I was told from my mentor, it was really interesting because she had a weightlifting female that was going to the world championships, and she had her schedule, all figured out. And she was like, well, I want to watch this person go the day before me. And my mentor said, our mirror neurons, we're going to relate to that person and their performance. And so it's kind of hard to separate that. So if you see her losing, I need you to walk away. And I thought about like if you had like a teammate or something, it was like, nope, I can't do it. That'd be really, really rude. But this wasn't a teammate or anything. And so not watching the match in front of you, just in case you see someone that's like losing hard or like someone super celebrating, like it, again, like protecting your energy, giving yourself that bubble. And so continuing to focus on what is happening in your body, what is happening in terms of what do you need? Do you need your water? Do you need to squat? Do you need to move? Do you need to put your hoodie on? Do you need to take your hoodie off? Do you need to feel the mat? Do you need to like all of these things, but also focusing on not the match in front of you.
There's been a few, talking about matches in front of you, there's been a few times where I've been waiting either mat side or in the bullpen, and like you know that there's like one of the harder moments, or not even harder, but like one of the more intense moments is when you're waiting mat side, right? And that match is happening. There's maybe it's going the whole, 6 minutes or whatever. And there's been plenty of times where I've looked over to the mat next to me or across from me or whatever, and somebody gets hurt bad. Oof. Like, there was one time in, I think, like, where was it? It was in Dublin. Yeah, the Dublin Open. A guy, I think he got heel hooked, and his like leg just like snapped. Brutal. Yeah, things like that. And it's happened enough times to where I'm just like, what I tell myself is thinking about that. It's not gonna change anything. It's not gonna help my match. It's only gonna hurt anything if I'm sitting there thinking about it and freaking out. Because at this point, it's like you just have to do the match now. It's and yeah, kind of the same thing with matches just happening in front of you, because it can be really scary initially. Like, especially it's so loud, so much is happening, and a guy wins the match or whatever and does that thing, and you're
charged
like, oh my
emotions.
God, like fuck, like
and speaking of acceptance, there's inherent risk that we have, obviously, of injury. Right. And that can happen accidentally, that can happen on purpose, that can happen because you didn't tap or whatever it was, the ref didn't see. And so we are accepting that every time we get on the mat. We are accepting that this is hard, that we're going to and that's why I say manage your expectations. What can you expect? You can probably expect your lungs to burn. You can probably expect to exert a lot of energy. You can probably expect to be sweaty. You can probably expect your fingers maybe to hurt because you're grabbing the grips, like
your forearms to blow out.
Yeah. And so if you can say like, oh, yep, it's happening, it just means like, yeah, I'm on the right track, or like, yeah, this is what I already know of and I've already accepted that this is part of the process. Like, no one has kids and says like, I love my sleep, I'm never going to, get rid of my sleep. And it's like, you have to accept that, yeah, like you're going to lose some sleep, but you know that it's a phase, you know that it's temporary. And so if you can put everything into just this focus, and it takes a lot. We only have a certain amount of attentional capacity. Your emotions, certain stimuli are going to affect how much you have, especially if you're using all of it for self-regulation. You get to the fight, and you're like, okay, I'm good, but like now I'm burned out. So being able to build yourself. And so when you get on the mat, this is where the ref says, okay, like step on the mat. I mean, how do you do it? Like I had mentioned, I bow, I wipe my feet, and then I trot over to the ref. Do you need to be the first to the ref? Do you need to get on your knees and pray? Do you need to go around and touch every corner of the mat or something weird? Like, what thing do you need to do that is going to say, like, this is my time. I'm in control. I'm doing this my way. Also, a lot of times when the ref says Prematch, it's like the men in black when they're like, pew, and you don't remember anything. It's like, that's how I felt with Bia. And so it was, I decided to help my clients by saying, get into your stance on the side. Like, you're ready to go. Like, I don't care when I have to go, but I'm ready whenever. Like, you just tell me when to go. I think it's appropriate for being in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
But I'm there so that I go in, I shake the ref's hand, I do all this stuff, but I'm already there. Like, I'm ready. Yeah. So
it's funny. I've done that sometimes where and then there's a problem on the board. Like,
yeah,
they have to plug the thing back in, and I'm like, okay, it's been a minute. Like,
yeah.
All right, this is awkward.
But it's funny you say that, because a couple weeks ago we had Aiden Valencia. He's 18 years old, but he's like an Olympic hopeful in wrestling. And we were talking to him about one of his matches, and we noticed before he came here, we were watching another match, and every time they reset them, right away, he's in his stance and he's ready to go, and you can tell the other guy's like, oh fuck,
yeah, I
gotta do it. And this is like a 30-year-old man against an 18-year-old kid, and just every time they're just like, all right, let's go, and he just, that alone I think is really powerful, and just like from a preparation standpoint.
Well, I think people think it's performative. I think people think that it's like, oh, I'm just trying to get in favor with the ref. Like, yeah, of course I'm gonna make sure that I tie my belt. I'm gonna make sure that I do everything perfect. But it's for you. Yeah. It has to be for you. Yeah. It can't be performative.
Yeah, it just puts me in the zone.
Right.